Welcome back to the channel. This is the third part in my 6-part mini-series going over the top 150 prospects in the NHL. We're getting to the good stuff now, heading into the top 100 in this episode. We'll be going over 100 to 76, so let's get right into it. Starting us off with number 100, that will be Joshua Waugh from the Montreal Canadiens. Waugh really made a name for himself playing for the junior team. For Team Canada at the juniors, because he was a late round pick his draft year, 5th round, 150th overall, but came to the juniors. He had 8 points in 7 games his first time playing there, and the next year in the tournament, 11 points in 7 games. Was a real star player, really stood out playing some top big minutes for the team. And then the following season, which was this past year, he played a solid amount of games in Laval, was pretty solid, 32 points in 41 games, looked pretty good. Then got the call up to the NHL and played some solid minutes. The Habs were really devastated by injuries this year, so Waugh got an opportunity to play up at the NHL level. He was nothing spectacular. He had 9 points in 23 games, but he was pretty good. He looked like he fit in. He looked like he was an NHL caliber player. Obviously still young, obviously still growing and developing, but he definitely can play at the NHL level. It's expected he'll start for the Habs this upcoming season, so he probably won't be a prospect much longer. I was debating on putting him a little higher. It feels like maybe he could go higher. He's a guy that you really could talk me into moving a decent chunk up this list, but I just felt his NHL performance was solid, but nothing spectacular, and I don't know what the ceiling really is for Joshua Waugh, but I do think he can be a solid player for the Habs in the coming years while they continue to grow and develop their young core. Next, we go to Tanner Howe at number 99. I loved this pick for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They didn't have much in the prospect pool when Dubas got there, and he's done a really good job of just grabbing talent wherever he can find it. And this pick in the second round was a great pick. I had Tanner Howe as a first-round player. I thought he should have been taken in the first round. Got him at 46th overall. It's a mid-second round pick. Really, really solid pickup for the Penguins. So Tanner Howe, the big question, the big concern is how well will he be able to play without Bedard. He had a really good year in Bedard's draft year with 85 points in 67 games, was projected as a top 15, top 20 pick because of his performance. This year, though, numbers took a bit of a hit playing without Bedard. He was really the only threat on this Regina team. 77 points, though, in 68 games. It's pretty solid considering how bad Regina was this year. They just didn't have a lot of support around him. So I'm hoping for a big jump out of him this coming season, playing again for Regina. He's not a name that could sneak onto the junior roster. He probably won't be on it this year, but I would expect next year he'll 100% be on that team. But this is a really solid value pickup for the Penguins, trying to just build that prospect pool from the ground up. With no first-round pick this year, you have to find talent later in the rounds, and this was a great consolation prize for not having a first-round pick, because in my opinion, I think this was a first-round level player in the 2024 draft class. Now we go to another Habs prospect in Owen Beck, who is very, very close. Him and Joshua Waugh, it's so tight, and you got Tanner Howe in the middle there, all three of those guys very close between them, but I really am a big fan of Owen Beck's game. He really impressed me playing for the juniors. He didn't have a ton of numbers, but his impact on the ice was prevalent. He was making plays, he was creating chances, playing good defense, and he was really, really good in the OHL this year. He started the year on the Peats and then got traded over to Saginaw, where he was really good for the Memorial Cup winning Saginaw Spirit. 32 games, 51 points. He was a plus 28 in the 32 games he played for Saginaw. He really was fantastic, and I think he's got a lot of room to continue to grow. I think that's why I put him above Joshua Waugh. He's only a year younger, so he's not got a ton more years on Waugh, but I just feel his ceiling might be a little bit higher. I just have a feeling that Beck has a bit of a higher ceiling. We'll see what he can do in Laval this year, but if the Habs have roster spots to open, which they very well could, the way that team is progressing, trading out their older pieces, they've also had bad injury luck in the past. I could see Owen Beck being this year's Joshua Waugh for him and getting a call up to the NHL to test him out, because I think he's getting to that point, and the Habs have open spots. They tend to, they're still a weaker team. They're on their come up, but they're still down in the bottom of the standings, so it's not unrealistic to imagine they have a roster spot open for Owen Beck at some point during this year. We now head to a San Jose Sharks prospect in David Edstrom. He was the Vegas first-round pick back in 2023, who was then traded for Tomas Hertl. He was really the main piece acquired in that deal for the Sharks. I think it's a solid pickup for them. I do like Edstrom. I think he was a solid pickup by Vegas at that point. It was really solid to boost up their prospect pool, would have been their best prospect at the time. And then for the Sharks, it's just they keep piling on prospects on prospects on prospects. Edstrom's, it's good to be on a rebuilding team to a degree, but a guy like Edstrom on a pool this deep, he's going to have a lot of work to do to make his way up this pool and make his way up onto this San Jose roster, because they have a lot of center prospects, forward prospects, so it's going to be a tough road for him. But he had a solid year this year. Like, his draft year wasn't anything spectacular. He had 28 points in 28 games at the U20 SHL level, played 11 SHL games, only had 4 points. But this past year, played a full season at the SHL level, 44 games, 19 points, plus 12. Really was comfortable. That was he fit in at that level, which is key for these European guys. That's the best way to sort of look at it. Is sometimes the best way to look at these prospects is just, can they fit in at the men's league level, at the professional league level? And that's what Edstrom proved this year. He's going to play again at Frölunda this upcoming season, and we'll see if he can take another step, maybe get up in near point per game levels if he can take a big jump this year. But we'll see. Overall, though, another great prospect for San Jose to have in their pool. Now we go to a 2024 first-round pick in Matvei Gidden of the Calgary Flames. Gridden's already had a bit of a, I don't know, not controversial, but he's just had a bit of an interesting time after the draft. He had committed to Michigan, and he was going to head over to play for the University of Michigan in the NCAA, but then his grades weren't good enough to actually go to school at Michigan, so he was forced to decommit. He's now expected to play in the QMJHL this upcoming season. But overall, he's a talented player, lots of skill, lots of goal-scoring ability, lots of talent. 83 points in 60 games for Muskegon in the USHL. He's really a talented, he's one of the top players in the USHL last year, so it's a solid pick for the Flames. Again, they had a really good draft. This was a solid pick. It was nothing spectacular in my opinion, but it was sort of around where a guy like Gidden would have been valued. But really, it's a talented player, and Calgary's done such a wonderful job in such a short time to build up such a good young core. And it's really been, taking the guys they had drafted in previous years when they were still solid, but then this past like year, they've flipped so many talented players and then flipped back and got tons of prospects, tons of picks, and it's done wonders for their prospect pool. I think Gidden will be a solid addition to that pool early on here. Now heading over to St. Louis, we've got Otto Stenberg, one of their 3 first-round picks from 2023. We already got one over Theo Lindstein in the last episode. Stenberg, another solid piece. This guy's a real leader. That was the almost the biggest quality he has. His best trait is his leadership. This kid was a big leader for his teams. That was what everyone was talking about at the draft. Is the St. Louis Blues got a real leader, a real good character guy, a great locker room presence. But beyond that, he's also a solid, just good hockey player. Again, it was very similar to David Edstrom. He was better, but he just a little bit better, as in he played a little bit more SHL games in his draft year, and then this year again he played nearly the full season at the SHL level. Didn't have quite as good of a year as someone like Edstrom. Edstrom actually did have a better year than Stenberg, but I'm still betting on Stenberg's talent and his upside. I think he will be a better player and is a better prospect. He had a really, really good junior tournament as well, was really solid for Sweden. He'll be back again this year at the juniors. I imagine he'll play a really big role for that team. Candidate to maybe be on the leadership group for them. But yeah, I think Stenberg's a solid piece. And again, St. Louis is another team that's done a pretty solid job of building up their prospect pool. I think last year's draft really helped them out, flipping O'Reilly and Tarasenko, and then you get Lindstein and Stenberg, and you also grabbed Dalibor Dvorsky in that draft. They've done a really good job of building up a solid pool. They're getting younger too with the 2 offer sheets they sent out to Holloway and Brober. They're trying to get younger. They're trying to move up into that younger core they have with a lot of other prospects they've picked up over the last couple of seasons. But I think Stenberg fits in well, and I think he'll be a solid piece for them in the future. We now head to Cole Hudson, the younger Hudson brother. Cole Hudson, he went to the Rangers in the draft, the Capitals in the draft, second round. He was a projected first-round pick and then ended up slipping out of the first round. And he kind of slipped out of the first round for the same reasons his brother did. That's honestly the best way to look at Cole Hudson, is he is a slightly toned down version, not slightly, he's a bit of a toned down version of Lane Hudson. Lane Hudson is definitely an elite best of the best kind of prospect. He's amazing, but both these guys were super talented players who slipped out of the first round due to size concerns and concerns on what they could do at the defensive end. So Cole Hudson had very similar, he's uber similar to his brother in that regards. He was really solid for the USNTDP this past season, had a really good U18 tournament at the Worlds, U18 Worlds for the USA. He's going to Boston University just like his brother did. It's a very similar track, and again, Cole Hudson, if he can take a step like Lane did, he could be a quick riser up this board. I mean, 2 years ago, Lane Hudson was a great prospect, but he was nothing spectacular. He probably fell a little bit higher on a list like this than Cole is now, but that's sort of where he was at, and quickly rose up to being one of the best prospects in the NHL. He's high up on my list. He'll be in that final part there, but Cole Hudson's a guy who could be a real quick riser if he can take the same developmental jumps that his brother took in his years after the draft. Now we head to a bit of an older prospect in Matt Coronado. Coronado's a very interesting prospect for Calgary. He's gotten a chance at the NHL level, but he just wasn't really putting up the numbers, but he puts up really good numbers in the AHL. He's one of those guys that, he's trying to find his spot. That's sort of why he's not eligible for the Calder this coming season, but that's why I kept him as a prospect, is because he hasn't really found his NHL spot yet. He's still an AHL player waiting to take that next step up. Because this past year in the AHL, over point per game, 42 points in 41 games, he was really, really, really good. But in Calgary, he only had 9 points in 34 games. He was a minus 15. That could be partially a consequence of Calgary just wasn't that good this past year, wasn't getting a ton of support, wasn't in the best situation. But as of right now, he's projected to start for the Wranglers, not the Flames. So I still think he's got another step to take. He needs to take that jump to be able to play at the highest level. I think he can take that jump, and he's such a talented player. You see it in the AHL. He's really a dominant force in that league, but he needs to be able to transition that game to the NHL level, which is something he's yet to be able to do. But I do think it's something he can do in the future, and I would not count out Matt Coronado just yet. He was a first-round pick for a reason, and I'm trusting in the talent this kid has. I think he will be a solid piece for Calgary in the future. We now head to another American player, Sheamus Casey of the New Jersey Devils. Casey was real solid for Michigan, an underrated piece on that Michigan team, an underrated American piece just in general. He's been really steady playing for Michigan, playing for the U.S. World teams, the junior teams, but he kind of goes under the radar because of all the other elite talent on those teams. But Casey's just quietly been really steady, a really solid two-way defenseman. This past year at Michigan, having a more advanced role, a bigger role with less competition. He had 45 points in 40 games, was really solid. And at the juniors, 6 assists in 6 games. He's a real talented puck mover, really great job of facilitating the offense for whatever team he's playing on. And I think he'll be a solid fit for this New Jersey team as a right shot defenseman. He's going to be playing for Utica this year. New Jersey's got a lot of defense prospects. They got a really good decor right now, so he probably won't crack that roster unless something goes terribly wrong for the Devils this upcoming season. But I think in a year or two, he could probably be on that decor just as a solid piece to have in that bottom pair, maybe the second pair as a right shot guy, because he's a real steady two-way defenseman who could play up and down your lineup. I think third pair is probably more realistic, especially considering the talent the Devils have. But I don't think he'd be out of place in a couple years on a second pairing for the Devils. Now to a very interesting prospect in Ratu, who was so highly sought after in his draft class. He was a top tier prospect in the 2021 class, but there were a lot of character concerns about his discipline and his just off ice concerns about the way he carried himself. But the New Jersey Devils took a shot, or New York Islanders, sorry, not the Devils. The Islanders took a shot on him in the second round, and then he was a part of the Bo Horvat trade, sending him to Vancouver. And he's developed really well. He's proven his talent right, and he hasn't had any other concerns with his game so far. So he's bounced around a lot. He's played up and down at the NHL level. He's played at the AHL level, playing in the Liga. And he's been really solid wherever he goes. I think he's about a year away from being in the NHL. I think that's where this guy's talent is. Another guy who could prove this rating really wrong. He could be, you could talk me into putting him up a little higher on this list. I've got him here at number 91, but I think he's a real solid talent who's got a lot of potential. It's more about him hitting that potential. I don't think he'll play for the Canucks this year, but I think in the 25-26 season, he'll likely be up with the NHL squad. If you look at the numbers, he had 52 points in 72 games at the AHL level for Abbotsford. I expect another jump from him this next season, playing for the Canucks. And then, 22-23, he had a bit of a bouncing up and down. He was up and down on a bunch of different levels. He played 12 games for the Islanders, had 2 goals, played 27 games for the Bridgeport Islanders in the AHL, played 3 NHL games for the Canucks after being acquired by them, and then had a solid stint with the Abbotsford Canucks in the AHL. So up and down the lineup, but he was really solid. He didn't put up crazy numbers, but he took that jump this coming year with some stability, not being traded, not playing up and down the NHL, AHL level, just played a full AHL season and was really, really an excellent player. And I mean, you can see that the talent is 100% there for Ratu. I mean, you look back even a year prior to that, in the 21-22 season, he was point per game in the Liga, which was a real solid year for him. He was also one of the best players on the Finland U20 World Junior team that year. So he's put up some good numbers at high levels of hockey, and I think a year from now he'll be an NHL player for the Canucks. They got a real solid pick here, and it's really solid because they're trying to make. After last year, they're really in a position to keep winning. Getting a guy on a rookie contract like Ratu, that will be real solid for them in the coming years. Now we go to Tarek Parasak for the Washington Capitals. This was an interesting pick on draft day. I like Parasak's game. I thought this was a bit of a reach, but he is a real solid player, and I think Washington's happy to have him. So it's sort of an interesting pick. He was taken at 17th overall. He took a big jump this year. This is another guy similar to a couple of the guys that were lower on this list. I want to see another year. I want to see him recreate this season in the coming year, because this was his first full WHL season, and he dominated. He was really, really good. 105 points in 68 games. He was really good. He's playing on a really good Prince George team too, with a lot of talent on that roster. But it was his first season. He didn't play. He only played 4 games for Prince George in the 22-23 season. Played his other games at the U18 prep school, where he was 2 points per game. He was really good there. So I want to see Parasak take another step, or not even take another step, just prove that he can put up these numbers again. I think there's a couple guys in that Prince George team that are going to be leaving. I think height has aged out, so that's a big piece they're going to be losing. But if he can put up these numbers again at the WHL level, he'll definitely rise up on this list. I just want to see more stability, more consistency, because you can't just base it all off one good year. You want to see him continue to progress. It's just one big jump. You don't want it to be a fluky year. You don't want to bet on it too early, but I do think Parasak has the potential to have another great season and move up on this list. Now we head to number 89 in Andrew Basha. Andrew Basha was a guy similar to Tanner Howe, who was really projected as a higher pick in this draft up a year prior, and then kind of slipped the draft rankings. I still really like him as a prospect, and the Flames got him. The Flames, again, I mentioned it a couple of times, really good draft. They got tons of great talent across the board. Luke Meese said Henry Muse earlier. You got Matt Gidden and Andrew Basha. I think Andrew Basha might be the best player they got in the draft. I believe he's the highest ranked out of their draft class for me. And I really don't know why he slipped out of the first round. I really like his game. He took a developmental step this season with Medicine Hat, was solid, put up better numbers. He'll play again this year, and he'll be playing on a solid Medicine Hat team. That team should be very good the next couple of years, because he'll be playing alongside the likes of Gavin McKenna, who's be a year older, and I think Caden Lindstrom will head back another year. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if he can stay healthy, that's another solid piece to play with Andrew Basha, and I think he'll have a great year. I think he's in a really good position to succeed and continue to develop in Medicine Hat. We'll see if he's another guy that can make a name for himself and challenge for a junior spot for Team Canada. They got a lot of talent coming in for these next couple of years. I think similar to Tanner Howe, he'll be more in that boat of he'll probably miss out this year, but next season he'll be on that roster when he's one of the older players. But I think Andrew Basha was a great pick for Calgary. They've boosted up their pool so much. They've got a lot of talent, and this will be a huge player for them. At 88, we have Jet Luchenko. a player who was a shock to see taken where he was. I was really surprised, especially considering some of the names on the board, man. I think Consta Hellenius was the one that really stood out to me. He would have been a fantastic fit in Philly. I'm not a fan of this pick, but the player is still really good. I still had Luchenko as a first-round guy. I just figured it would be more at the bottom half of the draft, not at 13th overall. But there's definitely tons of potential for Luchenko to be a great player. He had 74 points in 68 games this past year with Guelph, was solid at the World 18, under 18 Worlds with 7 points in 7 games. So some solid numbers he's put up these past couple seasons. And another guy who was a big jumper. 22-23 was not that good. He only had 14 points in 46 games. Took a massive step up this year for Guelph. And you hope to see him step up, because if he wants to prove himself worthy of that 13th overall pick, he needs to take another step up, because I think that's got to be what Philly's betting on. They're betting on him taking that extra step up, because right now I do not see him as a 13th overall pick player, but he takes another step up. There's a world where he can live up to that kind of hype, but I really wasn't a fan of the pick. Again, nothing on the play, like the player is still a great player. It's just at that spot, it feels like a bit of a reach. So you're hoping, as a Flyers fan, you're definitely hoping that Luchenko can take another step up this coming season to prove himself worthy. Because I thought there was a few better options on the board than Luchenko at that point. Now to a pick in the second round here of the last draft in Nikita Artamonov for the Carolina Hurricanes. Artamonov was he was a big riser for me in terms of like late towards the end of the draft process. I really liked his game, really liked what I found looking into him, but he's just a real good grinded out high motor, just grinds it out, and he's got tons of skill, tons of speed, tons of all sorts of different skills. You're getting 110% effort with him when he's on the ice. That's what you're getting with a player like Nikita Artamonov. He played a full KHL season this past year, 23 points in 54 games. Those are some really good numbers for an underager playing at the U18 level, playing at the KHL level as an 18 or under. That is really, really good, being able to play a full season and put up good numbers in the KHL. He's going to get another full season at that level this coming season. I think he can take another step. I mean, when you're playing at the KHL level that early in your development, there's the ceiling is so high. I think this is a great player for Carolina to bet on, and they have had a wonderful track record of betting on some of these KHL stars. I mean, you look at Alexander Nikishin, that's the big one that stands out. I think Artamonov has potential to really become a top-tier prospect in the coming years if he can keep his development going in the KHL. But I thought this was a real good find for Carolina at 50th overall. This was one of my favorite picks of the draft for sure. Now to the Seattle Kraken prospect, Edward Shalow. Shalow was a good prospect, a top-tier prospect. I think he went pretty much where he was expected to go in the 2023 draft at 20th overall. That was around the range most people, myself included, had him. But he didn't have a great year this past season. It was a bit of a down year for him. So you're hoping he can take another step up. Thankfully for Seattle, it's not really affecting your pool that much because they had a ton of other players who took big steps up this past season. But Shalow wasn't one of them. He had a solid year playing in the Czech League and was really a key player for the U18s. Even got some work for the U20 teams as a U18 player. And this past year moved over to the CHL. He played the season between Barrie and Kitchener and was nothing really that special, especially as a 19-year-old playing in the CHL. You'd expect at least point per game from a first-round pick, and you didn't get that. 38 points in 49 games, and really just didn't stand out, wasn't really that impressive. So you're really hoping another year, full year in Kitchener, he can take a step up, because he was still solid at the juniors. Yeah, it was a point per game in the juniors, but he really struggled at the CHL level. So maybe it was an adjustment period. He wasn't used to the different ice sizes, different style of play. So you hope that this year he can play, he can improve on that and be a better player, and prove himself to be worthy of that first round pick. So I'm really hoping he can take that step, and that's what you're expecting out of him as a first round pick. Now we head to another first-round pick from the 2023 class in Tanner Molendyk of the Nashville Predators. Molendyk, I think, he's going to stand out. He's going to be a big piece of the junior team for Team Canada this coming season, coming tournament. he was planned on being on the team this past season, but got injured in the prep process and the practice. I think it was either in a preliminary game or it was in a practice. He got injured. He wasn't able to play for Team Canada, which was really a huge blow for them. But he took a big step here for Saskatoon this past season. He's always been a good two-way player who can play both ends of the puck, or both ends of the ice. But he took a step up and was over point per game. After having 37 points in 67 games, he then jumped up to 56 points in 50 games as a plus 40 as well to go alongside that. So really, really solid jump up for Mullen, and I think he can take another step this year. He'll get some real good minutes. I expect him to probably be the top pair defenseman for Team Canada at the juniors. He's going to get a ton of ice time, ton of looks. He's really going to have a great chance to take a huge step up. And I think Nashville got a real solid pick here at 24th overall for their future in the 2023 draft. Now we head to another one of my favorite picks from the 2024 draft in Igor Chernyshov, and shocker, it was taken by the San Jose Sharks, who continue to add to their prospect pool. Chernyshov was a surefire first-round pick in my opinion. I have no idea why he slipped. He fell all the way out of the first round into the second round, right into San Jose's lap. That was an easy pick for them to make. He played a decent chunk of the KHL level, was not as impressive as a guy like Manov, but was really, really good at the MHL level. And this year he's taking his talents over to the CHL. He's going to be playing for Saginaw in the OHL, and Saginaw just coming up from a Memorial Cup win. They've got tons of talent. He should be able to play with some great players and have another step in his development. But yeah, this was a great pick for San Jose. I cannot believe he fell to them at 33rd overall. I took him with the first pick of the second round. I thought he should have gone way earlier than that. I'm a big fan of his game. And I mean, normally a guy like this who plays at this talent level, slips out of the first round, your expectation is, he's smaller. He must be a smaller player. Chernyshev's 6'3". He's a power forward who really can grind you out and play a super physical game. And then he slips out of the first round for some reason. I don't know, but San Jose's got a great pick on their hands. It was a real solid pickup by them. And they just keep building. And 2-3 years down the line, they are going to be a scary, scary team. They definitely have some of the best prospects probably the best prospect pool in the league. It is really an amazing what Mike Greer has done with this team in the past 3 seasons. Now we go right back to another San Jose prospect in Shakir Mukhamadullin, the big piece they got in the Timo Meier trade from New Jersey. Mukhamadullin, I think he hasn't been on any of the projected lineups for the Sharks this coming season. I think it would be a mistake to not play him at the NHL level this coming season. 6'4", he's a massive guy with a huge shot. That's his bread and butter. He's got one of the hardest shots you'll probably ever see. If he ever makes an all-star game, he will 100% be in that hardest shot competition. That's the kind of player he is. Also a solid skater. He's not dead on his feet, but he's been really, really solid for San Jose at the AHL level for the Barracuda. 34 points, 55 games. I think he should play at the NHL level. They got their decor is pretty abysmal, the Sharks, right now. I think there's no reason not to give him a shot, to give him that opportunity to prove himself at the NHL level, because I think he can do it. I think he's ready. He's got the size, he's got the physicality, he's got the shot, he's got the skating. I really don't see a reason why you wouldn't play him at the NHL level, but this was a real solid pickup in that Timo Meier deal. They also got Quentin Musty with the first round pick they got in that deal, I believe. So a real solid trade for when they shipped out Meier, and really this was the start of the mass sell-off they've done to acquire some real good talent over these past couple seasons. Because I mean, there was that trade where you got Musty, you got Mukhamadullin. They then shipped off Carlson that offseason, where you got a lot of pieces like that were just kind of older veteran contract weight with like Jan Ruda and whatnot. But you also got a first-round pick this year, which you used to trade up and grab Sam Dickinson. You also then traded Tomas Hertl for David Edstrom, we already mentioned on this list, and a couple first-round picks alongside it. They have really done a fantastic job of building this pool up, and first overall pick this year, 4th overall pick last year. They are going to be a dangerous, dangerous team in the coming seasons. Now heading up to Josh Doan, who was so interesting because when he was drafted in the second round of the 2021 draft, it was such it's a nepotism pick. It was like, he's only there because of his dad, but he is, and maybe that's the case why that pick was made, but it doesn't change the fact that pick has aged very well, and Josh Doan has been excellent. He was really good for Arizona at the NHL level with 9 points in 11 games, and he was really solid for Tucson in the AHL. He's going to be playing full-time in the NHL with Utah. I would hope to see him. He'll be middle six, I'd imagine, but he is really talented, and he's really done some good stuff ever since getting drafted back in 2021. The following year, he had a real good year at Arizona State with 37 points in 35 games. Then another great year for them as their captain with 38 and 39. And then came over to the AHL and put up some real good numbers. Got the call up to the NHL. I think he scored in his first game, if I'm not mistaken, and was just really talented. And Arizona was going through a bit of a tough patch. They were so hot at the start of the season. They really carried over right until I think it was February or January, where they went on that crazy losing streak, where they just lost an obscene amount of games straight, knocked themselves way out of the playoff race. But near the end of the year, Josh Doan got the call up, and he was a huge bright spot for them in a time where they were really disappointed with the way the season had fallen for them after that losing streak. Now we head up to Matthew Wood at 81, another Nashville Predators prospect. A guy who I think is similar to Edward Shalow in the way his development's been. He was highly touted heading into the draft, and then heading into the draft year, but had a disappointing season and slipped down the rankings. Nashville took a shot at him at 15th overall, and he's just had a very up and down kind of progression since even before being drafted, just in his prospect development as a prospect. So 2023 first round pick. He had a solid year at UConn, 34 points in 35 games, was really good for the U18 junior team. And then went another year at UConn and took a real step back, only 28 points in 35 games, but was also a bright spot for Canada at the junior tournament this past year with 4 points in 5 games. So he really was solid there. I expect him to be back again this year playing for that junior team. And he also transferred to Minnesota, the University of Minnesota, where he should get hopefully more playing time. Maybe he'll get a little more support. I think Oliver Moore will be back again this year at Minnesota, and they got a couple other solid prospects still there. So he should have a better look this upcoming season at Minnesota. And I really hope, if he can play, again, I'm pretty sure Oliver Moore will still be at Minnesota, and if he can play alongside a playmaker like Oliver Moore, who can really unlock the goal-scoring touch Matthew Wood possesses, that will be huge, and he can continue to grow and develop, and that's his game. His game is a shot. He's a wicked shooter. That's what he's got. Nashville's got a couple of those guys in their system, but Matthew Wood has got a wicked shot. He's a real talented scorer. He doesn't do a ton of other things that are like stand out, but if you can get him going offensively, you've got a real stud on your hands. So I think this transfer over to Minnesota is a real good change for him. It's a real good decision to make to help his development. Heading into number 80, we've got Denver Barke of the Philadelphia Flyers. He's another guy whose size is the concern with Denver Barke. That's really the name of the game for prospects like this. He fell to the third round in the 2023 draft. He also just didn't have as good of a season heading into that draft, but last year, playing for that stacked London Knights team, he was amazing. He was one of their standout players alongside the likes of an Easton Cowan or a Sam Dickinson, but he was really good with 102 points in 64 games. He also was he didn't have as good of a year. He wasn't a standout year, and when you're 5'9" like Denver Barke, 59 points in 61 games isn't quite enough to overshadow your size. 102 points, that's definitely enough. That's more than enough to overshadow the fact that you're 5'9". So real solid year for him. If he has another step up this year, playing for London again, he could rise even higher. Again, size is definitely a concern. 5'9" is very small, but if he can transition to the NHL nicely and play at that bigger size level, he's got tons of talent, tons of skill. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we get out of Denver Barke this upcoming season. But the Flyers got themselves a real steal here at 95th overall back in 2023. Now we head to a prospect that I personally love as a Penguins fan, in Ville Koivunen. Because I looked into a lot recently since he got picked up by the Penguins in that Jake Gensel deal. He was the big piece acquired. Michael Bunting was as well, but in terms of prospects, it was Ville Koivunen. And Koivunen had an excellent breakout season in the Liga, 56 points in 59 games, really impressive stuff. He's going to head over to Wilkes-Barre Scranton this coming season, take another year to develop, and then in the 25-26 season, there's a shot he can crack that Penguins roster with the direction they're trending. I doubt that roster has tons of talent by that point, so I could see a role where he cracks that roster because he's a real talented player who Carolina liked enough, and the Pittsburgh Penguins liked enough that he was the big fish acquired in a Jake Gensel trade, who was the best trade asset on the block at the deadline. So this was a real solid pickup for the Penguins, and it's a real boost their prospect pool is. Probably, I think I got him as the second best prospect in their system as a player, but he's really solid, and this was a big pickup. Again, obviously very highly sought after, very highly regarded by both the Penguins and the Hurricanes in this to make this Gensel deal come through. Now we go to a Carolina prospect in Jackson Blake, one of the guys they didn't send over in that Gensel deal. Jackson Blake is probably going to play at the NHL level this upcoming season for the Hurricanes, I think, because he got the call up at the end of last year. Didn't really do anything, didn't really do much in the one game he played, but the expectation is he'll either play there or he'll play in the AHL. Depending on where Carolina is with their lineup, he might not have a spot because they are trying to win, so they're not going to take that risk if it's not needed. But he had a good breakout campaign for North Dakota last year, 60 points in 40 games. Really, really solid stuff. And another player that Carolina they draft so well. 4th round pick in 2021. The other guy's size could be a concern at 5'11", but I don't think it will be with a guy who has this much skill, this much speed, talent. He passes well, he shoots well. He's just got a complete game, really. And as a 4th round pick, he's developed quite nicely during his time at the University of North Dakota. So this is a real great pick for the Hurricanes, who, again, they've been good for the past, I think it's been 5 or 6 years probably now, that they have been a talented team who's always competing for the cup and always considered a cup contender, yet they keep just finding great players to keep replenishing that prospect pool, and they consistently have a solid pool of players to reach into to grab up to the NHL level. Like Seth Jarvis this year had a massive role for them. He was another solid pickup they got. Nikishin will be there in a few years. We already mentioned Manov. You've got the 2 guys they flipped for Gensel and Ponomarev and Koivunen. They just keep fueling that prospect pool. They keep picking up guys and throwing them up either in trades to get them better right now or calling them up at the NHL level, and they're just instant impact players. So I expect similar stuff there from Jackson Blake. We now head back to the San Jose Sharks. They're a heavy feature on this part of the list. At 77th, we have Daniil Gushin. Gushin it's going to be interesting to see if he can crack the San Jose lineup. I think he's got the talent to probably do it, but they did a lot. The Sharks picked up a lot of just players. They didn't pick up anything like fantastic. They have Tyler Fleury was probably their biggest pickup, but they do have a lot of roster players they picked up over the past couple seasons, and or mainly just this past off season, that are just going to fill roster spots. And it'll be tough for Gushin to crack that lineup, but I think he should get a shot. He was really excellent, nearly point per game at the AHL level this year. Also had 2 points in 4 NHL games this year. The year before that, he had 2 points in 2 NHL games. So the talent is there for Gushin. I think he should get a shot. I don't think he'll be a long-term top-line player for the San Jose Sharks by any means, but I do think he's a real solid fit that they can pick up right now and he can have an impact on this roster. He's bounced around a lot in his career, but he's always been a steady player. He's always been reliable, and he had a real breakout campaign this past year after a solid AHL campaign the year before, but this year he really showed his stuff, show what he has. I think with a good camp, he can make this opening day roster for the Sharks and make an impact at the NHL level, but it'll take a good camp because they did pick up quite a few other players. And now to the last player in this episode, in this edition, with Fabian Leal, the top Bruins prospect. He's a guy who will be playing at the NHL level this next season. I think that's a surefire thing with the pieces the Bruins to move in and out to make the cap work for them. But Leal, it's been a slow roll for him. 2021 first round pick, but he looks ready to go. I think he'll probably play second line. That's the projection right now for him playing for the Bruins. Because it was a bit of a slow roll after getting drafted. He was drafted out of the SHL, where he had just a solid year, nothing crazy. Then went over to the CHL, had a really good year for the Vancouver Giants with 62 points in 53 games. Then came over to the AHL and was solid, but nothing spectacular last season with 37 points. He also that year had a really disappointing junior tournament where he was held pointless. He just really, after The year before that, he had 6 points in 7 games. The season after, the next year, having nothing. Really not a good look. It was really a bit of a disappointment for him in his development, and people started to get a little worried. But this past year kind of put that all to rest with 50 points in 56 games at the AHL level. So really solid stuff there. I think the heavy expectation is that he'll play second line minutes, maybe third line for the Bruins this coming season. As you know, they lost quite a few pieces. I think he's a guy who's ready to go, and you got to get him in the AHL ASAP to kind of keep his development on a steady roll. So I do like Leal, and I think he can prove himself worthy of an NHL spot. This will be a big year to determine what his ceiling is and what his floor is as an NHL player. If he can prove himself to be, if he fits in right away, he's got a high ceiling and he's got lots of potential to reach. If he struggles to blend in, struggles to find a role, who knows where we go from there. But I think he'll definitely be up there this coming season. So that will do it for part 3 here, number 100 to 76. Leave your thoughts and questions down below. If you got any players that should be higher. As I said before, a lot of these guys pretty interchangeable. You could convince me up or down a couple spots either way because they're so close. A lot of these guys are so close in talent, so close in value for their teams. But if you have any opinions you want to let out in the comment section, feel free, and be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned for the next part.